Welcome everyone to Underwater Basket Weaving 101.
Hello, everyone. We're just going to let our attendees come in and join us in these few minutes before we get. As a reminder, this is being recorded and it is on our YouTube channel and will be embedded in the event page that you found on the community. I will repeat myself, so you might hear this twice. We do welcome questions during and after the event. You'd want to post them on the community link, and I'll make sure that I put that into the chat window. So if you come back and have a question later for Stephen will be following that link and he'll be able to answer your questions.
Well, someone was paying attention there.
Yes, Stephen, you will be following that link. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and put it to all attendees. I said, here is the community link. All right.
2 minutes.
A few more minutes. Yeah, you know, everyone's got to wake up, drink some coffee, join us today. We'll also be doing part 3 on the 28th. All right. Same time, same channel. I'll be putting up a post very shortly on that. So we just got confirmation from Stephen that we'll be doing part 3 for next week. The 28th is next week, correct?
No, week after next.
Week after that. Phew.
Yeah, next week I am teaching, so I won't be able to do that. I'm doing an ITSMI class.
Wonderful. We also love to hear back. You can also put it in the comments on that event page if there's anything that you would like Stephen to cover in future episodes, what knowledge he would like to share. Speaking of knowledge, I'm sure you'll be able to find Stephen Bell wandering around the Knowledge 2020 in Orlando, Florida this coming May. So make sure that you find his sessions and when they are soon to be released in the catalog. And let's see, or you can also find them around the Accenture booth, probably hanging around the community booth. So just come on and stop by and say hi.
I've got a lot of submissions I put in for CreatorCon. We'll see if any of them get accepted here.
I'm sure they will. All right, let's go ahead, I think, and we're at the top of the hour.
Alrighty.
So you take it away. I'll do my magic on the backside.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of the ServiceNow community Ask the Expert. We'll be doing the second round of Flow Designer Basics, where actually it should probably be labeled Flow Designer Intermediate. We'll be covering basically some of the scripting side of things, but I'm also going to be walking you through a little bit on the conditions, as they can be somewhat confusing. So we'll be going through the if-then structure, and then I'll point out a couple of things in that regard. Question came up, Lisa. It says, did you already email the part 1 presentation to participants? I believe it was attached to the community location for the part 1 video.
That is correct. I have attached your slides to that. In a moment, I'll try to get that link put up into the Zoom webinar chat. So thank you.
All right, so let's get rolling here. For those of you who are attending for the first time on one of these, this is me. I am a ServiceNow MVP, have been for 4 years. And I have written over 160 articles. I've got a number of Ask the Expert YouTube presentations I have done over the past couple of years. Also a certified instructor on 9 topics, and I focus mostly on the more advanced side of things, more advanced topics such as scripting and application development. I am also certified as I have the microcert on Flow Designer and the microcert on Integration Hub. I highly encourage you to go after microcerts should you get the opportunity. Let's see, anything else I want to throw out here? Yeah, I'm also certified in several. I think I got 20 certifications now, so I'll give you some idea of where I am expertise-wise. All right. Oh, and I work for Accenture, and I'm a senior architect for Accenture. So a couple of things. One of them is I really wanted to, I was humming and hawing on how to show you how to do this first. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the flow from last week, and I'm going to show you how to create code for it so that you can actually call it from something like a scheduled job or a fixed script or a business rule, or any of a number of things. But it's really interesting. ServiceNow has provided an excellent tool for this. They have been punching out these auto code creators for us for quite a while, especially with web services and REST message APIs. And there are a couple other places where this kind of stuff occurs, but here it makes it extremely nice. And it's a whole leg up from the workflow / orchestration side, where we have to go look up the coding techniques that are sitting either out on developer or are sitting out on the community. I've written articles on how to fire off workflows from scripts and everything else. The API is quite robust there. Here, the API is not quite, matter of fact, it's very, very new, very nascent, not quite robust at all, but it has some basics in it that are very useful. And one of those is the code snippets facet. So I'm going to demo that right now. And what I'm going to do is open the one from last week. So again, Flow Designer is underneath the Flow Designer. This is out of the box or baseline with the platform. You get all this as part of the platform. One thing I want to note is integration with other things is not out of the box, like other things being the service catalog side. And we'll get into service catalog in the next session. All right, so I already opened this up. This is what the Flow Designer looks like. And what I'm going to be doing is refreshing because it's taking its sweet time. All right, there we go. And I'm going to open up the one we created last week, which is this action on incident change. Excuse me. Now, if I wanted to call this, it actually has a very, call it from code. It actually has a very nice component to it. Now notice, incident updated. This is expecting an incident input and has the active is true already built in, and triggers run once. All this stuff is what we set up last week and is very basic. Now this triggers from a table change, but what if we want to trigger it from a scheduled job? That it isn't useful except for on an incident changing, and at which point it kicks this off. So yes, we can kick it off by code, and it's very interesting on what ServiceNow has given us. So if we go over here to this tri-ellipse, or this sideways ellipse, if you will, we'll punch that and notice that there's a code snippet down here. Now, one thing about code snippet, it's grayed out until you activate the flow. And if you do not activate the flow, it will not appear. So let me say again, watch. When I deactivate the flow, yeah, I don't care. Musical interlude. Then I go over here, you'll notice, oh, okay, it lied to me. Let me make a change, because it may require that a change be done. Bingo. Okay, so changes are present. If I hit save, nothing ever works in a demo for me these days. Okay, there you go. After the save, so it has to be a save change that hasn't ever been activated before. So there you go. So I made a change, I saved it, but until I activate, this code snippet part will not activate. So I have to activate the flow with the new changes. I had it partially right. Give me credit. All right, and then under this, the code snippet part will appear. All right, so let's bring this up. This is an auto-generated chunk of code that ServiceNow provides us that allows a couple of different things that can be done. One of them is a start flow capability, which is asynchronous, and the other one is an execute flow, which is synchronous. This is super nice, really super nice. Now, why is this a big deal at all? Why do we even care? There's actually two places where this gets real interesting. One is in a before or after business rule. After, I would throw it into async business rule, but on a before business rule, you want to do an asynchronous call if possible to free up the user. Remember, business rules, before business rules and after business rules are synchronous with the user and do not release the user to continue until after they've finished execution. So this allows you to actually do an asynchronous call inside of a business rule and therefore free up the execution to continue. This other one is a synchronous one, so it has its place too in the business rule if you want to remain synchronous on everything. Now on the back end, it really is meaningless. So I can see where this would be a problem also with the script actions, the UI actions. On the UI actions side, if you had synchronous, it'd make the user wait, but asynchronous, it would immediately free up the user to continue working. But when it comes to scheduled jobs and stuff like that, then it becomes, I don't care. The synchronous would probably be the better way, unless you want to fire off a whole bunch of things in a row and they're all fire and forget. Otherwise, I would do a synchronous execute. So there you go. Asynchronous does not make anything wait. Synchronous, wait until I'm finished. And I love this. This is wonderful. Workflows, always synchronous on the back end. And you know, like I said, it has its place. You can fire it from front end, but it's still synchronous. You can get out of the synchronous, asynchronous stuff with workflows by going to events. And you can do something similar here. You can fire off an execute flow from a script action via an event and have a similar functionality as the asynchronous. Again, this is nice. I like this a lot. All right, so I'm going to copy the code. It's another very nice little thing. I would like to have this, by the way, in a couple other places. It's kind of painful, or was kind of painful over in the web services side, just saying. All right, so now what? I've got my chunk of code. I've got myself, set up. Let's go play with it in a fixed script. So this is server side. It's always server side that you're doing flows and flow designer and stuff like that. Do new, and my incident kickoff, something like that. Paste the code, and notice we got a couple of bugs, a couple of problems. Well, current has to be gotten from someplace, right? In a business rule, current's current. So in a business rule, you just say current, and boom, you're off and running. And table name, it could be any table name you want. We're going to go with incident on this. And I'm going to go with the synchronous version of this, in which case, in real life, I would delete this commented out code because I'm sticking with this. The other thing that's kind of interesting on this is that you'll notice we have an inputs capability here. Now on flow, this is always just this stuff right here on regular flows. I'll show you how to get around the problem of this lock-in by going to a subflow here in a moment. But this stuff, you're pretty much locked into what you see here with a flow, because remember, flows require a trigger, and most of the time this trigger is table actions. So that's kind of restrictive. All right, so we get around that by subflows, and I'll show you a little bit about that here in a moment. All right, so got to have my inputs. The inputs, I've got a reflection of the name of my flow. Notice that it's got the scope in it. And I'm pretty much set to go here, but I got to have a current. So let's go play with current. So we're going to bring in an incident, a single incident, and that will be 70. Let me dupe this here because 70 is one of my play incidents. I also have 56, I think is my other one. So let's go take a look real quick. Okay, there's 70. We'll go with that one first. And I think the other one's 50, something like 59. And it's 159 because it has no collar, and that's important. All right, so I've got this. If I test it and I don't, I use 70, which I didn't pick. There we go. Run test. You want to make sure your flow, of course, executes correctly and everything looks beautiful on this. It flopped its way down through things. So looks good. Cancel. So I can use 70 as my test record. Let's go over here and we'll do a var incidents equals new glide record incident, and then incident dot get, and we'll do a number is blah. Now, normally I'd have an if statement around this and do everything else, but I know it exists because I just went and looked it up, right? So incidents, the incident is real. Now I'm going to pump that into my workflow. Now remember, we have on Flow Designer a really cool little thing called executions. Now executions will show up as the latest run if you order by created descending. This is an extremely helpful tool. It'll actually let us see anything executed as far as the flow is concerned. And this is any flow, by the way. You come down here, you'll see others in here. So I can
Oh, wait a minute, your audio got really dragged out there. Your audio is dragging.
Thing.
Yeah, you're sounding like a little cyborg.
Kill something.
Sorry.
I am a cyborg. Yeah, let me get rid of a couple things here.
That's already started.
How's it sounding now? Any better?
Yeah, a little bit better.
Yeah. Let me get rid of one more thing here. For whatever reason, I was having a bandwidth issue.
Okay.
How am I sounding now?
Sounding great. Let's go.
I killed Teams. That seemed to fix it. All right. All right, so this is ServiceNow, so I can right-click on things and filter better. All right, so let's go run our script. And as you see, it pretty much, other than this little thing right here, it really didn't have much. So let me replace this with incidents. Let's go ahead and save it. Now, the nice part about fixed scripts is that it versions. Ta-da! So if I mess something up, I can fall back. The other one is I can run it in the background if I want to. So when I hit run script, I can hit proceed or run in the foreground or proceed in the background. And what it'll do is free me up. This is asynchronous. It'll free me up, and then I go monitor things in the logs. But I like seeing things up front. You have a total of 300 seconds, by the way. So if it doesn't run in those 300 seconds, then it will just quit and it doesn't do anything. Okay, it looks like the Flow Designer actually worked. Notice we kicked it off and it printed things off in the log here. Pretty cool, huh? So Flow Designer was kicked off from a script with very little to do to get it to work. Now I can take this whole piece of code if I want to and drop it into a scheduled job and it'll work 100%. But that was done with the, with simply just doing execute flow. Now watch this. Yeah, hold my beer, watch this. All right, so now on this next one right here, this was the asynchronous. It will work exactly the same, only this is fun. Watch this. Run, proceed, boom, done. And it really isn't. It executed in the back end. I don't get anything in the front end, so I have to go look at my logs. But you saw asynchronous, let me loose immediately. Oh, I didn't want that with system logs. And today. And there it is. Cool, huh? So there you go. That's how you fire the Flow Designer flow from inside of a script. And I will provide the script for everyone to look at when we're done with the session here. I'll throw this out so you guys can look at it, but it's super easy. Just create your, yeah. It's my code, boop, boop, boop. Let's see, so it's in draft state and not visible yet. Oh, I thought you were asking a question, Lisa. This has been activated,
Just
so.
setting you up for this one.
Yeah, okay. I'll quit letting you distract me then. So that's pretty much that. What is this nonsense now? Oh yeah, okay. So executing from fixed script. Now let's talk about subflows a little bit here. So subflow is something that would normally be called from a flow designer flow. So there are actually two flavors of flows. We have one that's flow designer flow, and the other one is a subflow that can be called from a flow. However, there's a really nifty thing that you can do with subflows, which allows you to call them directly from inside of a script. This allows you to create dynamic feeds into that script, and you can use JSON. You can drop anything you want to into the subflow, and away it goes. So yeah, by the way, this stuff, everyone, is all doable inside of your personal developer instance, and it is out on the developer site as far as API information is concerned. Plus, it's also sitting in the it's out on the docs side of things. So that should answer your questions, Chandran. It looks like you found it anyway. All right, so let's go look at subflows real quick. So back to the lab, Kronk. All right, so now under Flow Designer, let's go ahead and kill this stuff off. Oh, I want to show you that. So under executions, this one was the one we just fired at 12:17. So let's go look at it. And you can see it ran, did everything. And this was executed from the script. And it opened up the current record, which is hilarious because it was 70, right? And executed it, took a look at it, went and grabbed it, did everything about it. Neat, huh? Yeah, so you get the idea, you know, the execution from the script acts just like an actual firing had occurred from a table change. And there wasn't a table change. I just fed it a record and said, go baby. And it ran off with it. So now let's take a look at subflows. So I went ahead and created this thing, incident checker in here, just kind of save a little bit of time. Let's go look at it. And all this does is it takes the inputs and you know, does a couple things with them and then logs it. So you have to give it inputs. Actually, you don't. This can be blank, but it's best to do that if you want to actually do dynamic calling from a script. So I gave it an incident number and a caller, and it's going to go look these up, and then it will look up the record. It'll use the incident number and caller information, return the first record found, and then log the information out to the log. We found last week that this does not work. The \n stuff does not function correctly. And I wonder if HTML would be better in here. I wonder if you can do an HTML BR. I'm gonna try it, see what happens. I don't think this will work, but the / stuff should have and wasn't translated correctly when it dropped it into the log. So I'm going to try this, and if it works, then you'll see something new, like just like me. All right, so this is how I try things out to see if they function, because if something I know should function doesn't, then I have to find an alternative to it. All right, so this is my Flow Designer flow, our workflow, sub workflow, and I'm going to save it. And notice that the code snippet stuff is here. It's available to me on Subflows, but it isn't published yet, so it isn't available yet. And now it's published, and I can get in there and copy the snippet. Now this is really cool because this chunk of information, it allows me huge flexibility. So I can create a very flexible flow in as a subflow and do anything I want to with it. This mimics very much of the workflow side of things, because with workflows, I can do the same thing, but it's out of the box and it is very straightforward. This one, you have to do the same functionality with subflows. So I have mixed emotions about this being better or worse, you know, stuff like that. But suffice it to say, I have parity, and that's very important. This gives me the same ability as the workflow has to be able to execute a flow and be able to give it a dynamic set of information. So I could set this up, and what you're seeing actually is a JSON format. I could set this up as JSON and then send it straight across, and it will utilize it on the other end. I can parse a JSON string on the other end, so I could send this across as JSON or JSON strings. You know, it doesn't matter. It's whatever's in here. It handles it all for me, and then handles it on the other end as an actual object. So this goes in as JSON, and it comes out on the other side as JSON, and knows to pull it all apart. Notice this mimics my inputs that I created over here on the Subflow. It's very important to note that. So if you don't have inputs, you can't send anything across here that'll be recognized by the Subflow. All right, copy this code snippet. Boom. All right, so let's go back over, and we got that guy. Let's try another one. So new, kick off a Subflow. Paste. All right, again, it needs to have the variables filled in with something. Well, I've got one over here. Let's go back to my incident. I've got that one, and I had 70 was my other one. So let me get back with 70, since that'll be consistency. I want this will mimic almost exactly what the other one did. I'm going to get a record that I specify, and then it just log it. So back to the script. My number will be, poof, let's get rid of the string because it's really unimportant, other than to tell me what it is. And then this should be the caller, Beth Anglin. Now, there's a problem with this in that Beth Anglin is the name, right? So this is really caller name. So on the Flow Designer flow, when I'm going to get the record, this actually won't be correct. So this says caller name is, I had to go get the name here. So let me do that for y'all so you can see this. So this caller is the caller name, not the caller sysid, which is what normally would be expected with this right here. So it would look, you know, how do I get the record, so to speak? So let me kill this, and I'll just get rid of this step, and I'll show you how I created this step. So, and choose caller. Now this is off of the record, the incident record. So this is all incident records have this. Now notice this is for the sysid. So I can't use that. Now, if we go further down, you'll see an arrow next to the caller. I'll click on that. This will list up all of the fields that are in the caller record, which is really the user table. And what I'm after is the caller name. Right here. So now it says caller.name, and then I can pull this pill across and drop it. You got to get the data to match up. And this is one of the big things that I'm going to re-emphasize here in this session, is that the data has to match up, and you've got to take into account these other things, and don't expect the code underneath the hood to automatically fix it up for you. It will not. You need to be very specific about what field you're going after here. Otherwise, it'll be the sysid. Okay, pretty good. Let's save. This is not going to affect anything.
One quick question that came on our YouTube channel is, what example of a use case of a fixed script call for a subflow rather than a normal flow designer flow?
Again, the flexibility side. What if I don't know what I really want? I want to set this up inside of a, let's say inside of a scheduled job. and I want it to have, I go out and I scrape a bunch of records from incidents that have this particular um, configuration to them that is important to me to be able to operate on. I pull all that in and then I loop through it to send one at a time through. Now, if I wanted to box up the data so that the flow can handle it a different way, then I can tear down those records and utilize the components from those records and go do something else with them. No, it doesn't, Kevin. If we go over here and publish, so did that use case make sense? It gives me tremendous flexibility. I'm not locked into the glide record being placed, each glide record being placed in. I could literally send all the glide records across to my Subflow and have it process them for me if I wanted to. And that would be another use case, is being able to handle more than one record at a time.
And just as a context, Kevin's question was, does that change? Would be generated by the code snippet?
No, it does not. If you take a look at this, it didn't change a single line.
Great.
And the reason is, the caller stayed the same. I didn't change that. So caller on this side would be Beth Anglin, and then incident blah blah. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to run it as the synchronous. And here with the subflows, we still get the asynchronous versus synchronous. Again, if you're firing this for some reason inside of a business rule and you've got a bunch of stuff you want to send across, you can box it up in here. You can create as many inputs as you want to. You cannot do that with a flow. You can do it with a subflow. Subflows give you the ability to create all your own inputs. Flows do not. It's not the same. Matter of fact, there's no way from a flow to actually do that. Flow requires a trigger. If you create this, the trigger is going to be some table action. I'll show you again, if we create a flow, tester, and submit, select a trigger, there you go. This is all you get. You can't have just a bunch of inputs. You've got to pick one of these, and this is how the flow is locked into a certain type of input. Subflows are not.
You're reading the question?
Yeah, I'm looking at his question. Hi, if you recall, and this is Josh, I had a question regarding a scenario where we don't want to use a flow hard-coded in a rhythm. We already have a standard request model workflow we use, so we'd use a VR to trigger the flow, but it doesn't seem to be working. It mentions inputs not available. Yep, that's where the subflow comes in, and you would specify your own inputs and drive the data through to the subflow, and the subflow would then chug along just like a regular flow would. Subflows are to me, the powerhouse here. Flow Designer flows are the no-code side. Subflows give you the ability to do some really flexible models. I would say if you've got specialized inputs that aren't current, it's not current or previous or any of that stuff, then yeah, Subflow is probably the way you want to go. Yeah, even using a business rule. If you have a Flow Designer flow, you've got to work just like you saw with the fixed script I showed earlier, and I'll go back to that here in a second, but that fixed script earlier just gave you the current and the table, remember? And you have to specify those inputs when triggering it from a business rule. If you don't, then it will give you that error.
A lot of great questions coming in.
I'm reading his follow-up. Well, we have a scenario where a rhythm A or B.
Out loud because we have our live audience. It's recording.
Okay.
Not see it.
Yeah, I was reading it out loud. Well, we have a scenario where if rhythm A or B is inserted, trigger flow to create a change. We can't do this because of the isolated rhythm flow. Yep. So that comes back to the subflows because it gives you the capability of specifying which one you want to deal with. If I understand your scenario correctly, you can feed either one in, and you don't. And on the other side, you deal with it accordingly. Otherwise, you're locked into current, and that's a pain. Or you can go read it. Okay, followed up again. Do we gain anything using this versus standard workflows? Not on this, in this regard, Josh. The standard workflows are still ahead of the Flow Designer side of things on being able to do loopbacks and having the workflow scratchpad. So if those things are necessary in development, then yeah, you got to go the workflow route. Otherwise, I haven't found a parity issue with calling into things unless you've got some sort of scheduled side of things, and scheduled workflows and stuff like that have a API for that. And this, I'd have to go look. I don't think this does, not for schedule. Sure. Yep. All right, so continuing. This is the synchronous side. Notice that this whole thing is sub workflow. So I'm sorry, subflows. This is where this is different. Remember, we had execute and start flow. Now we have execute and start subflow. So I'm going to do the synchronous one. I'm going to do this as inputs. By the way, this can also be rewritten accordingly. You have inputs. You can do inputs.incident number, and notice how it popped it equals, and it will automatically create this property, just like it does with the array stuff. What ServiceNow is doing is showing something that's really cool. This allows me to have dynamic variables put into the inputs, which is a very advanced thing, and allows me to do some really wild configuration, data type configuration in the subflow itself. So I can actually pass in dynamic data and have a handler on the inside of the subflow to deal with that dynamic data. But right now we're going to lock it in, and I'm not going to go this route. If I wanted to, I could output my inputs. So I could do a gs.info right here, and I could say, give me the information on what this looks like. So I can say my inputs equals, and we'll do a plus and do a JSON.stringify, and we'll put the inputs in here, and we'll actually get to see it in the logs. All right, right here, I usually clean this up a little bit. I have my own way of doing this. I get rid of this because I hate it. And I just say right here, that's sufficient. I'll also put a dash in front of it. So if something kabooms in the try, then this catch will print out in the log, and I'll actually have it. This doesn't work, by the way. Try catch does not work with glide record real well, and it's like one or two very unusual scenarios trigger a glide record error that doesn't get eaten. Glide record eats its own errors and fixes up the glide record for you, which is terrible. It's a bad thing. But anyway, all right, so let's see. And let's fire this off. Since it's synchronous, we'll be able to see the actual output way down here at the bottom. And we had an error. The current operation ended in state error, no thrown error. But you saw the error actually fired. I bet you it had a cough and fit over the stringify on this one, because we didn't go. I can turn it into a JSON. Let's do this again. So instead of printing it out, I'm going ahead and just running it. Nope, my incident checker blew up. So that was the real problem. Let's go see if the actual executions has anything in it. It does not. So my subflows, I have an incident, I have a caller, they're both strings. But I never fired it. execute my incident checker, incident caller inputs. No, this was working before I fired it up for the class. All right, what did I do different here? Did I not get it all? And the answer is I left an R off. That much. Copy everything. So it blew up when it tried to feed everything across for execute Subflow. Let's try it, the other one. Sometimes I've had trouble with the synchronous side of things. Yeah. Let's see what it do, dude. System logs. No record found. So what ended up happening was it made the flow designer flow. Let's go over here. Executions. It was working. I had it filtered. Nice. Okay, and trying to look up the record for Beth Anglin and incident 10170. The caller ID name did not match. So we need to go find out why name did not match. And that, I think, is our entire problem. So let's look up Beth Anglin real quick and see why she didn't show. So we had incidents, not self-service. There we go. We had this incident and there was no caller for that one. The one I wanted was this one. My bad. Hey, a 0, okay. All right, run, proceed, good. Worked. Dynamic check for incident number. The BR didn't work. Oh well. And that was it. That's the only thing we printed off there, that flow. So there you see it. It called it and it echoed the information back for us. And the BR did not work. So I'll just put a comma. All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had a quick question. I forgot where it was in the placeholder. He said, how did he just deduce the name that didn't match? He didn't catch that in the log.
Okay, so what I found was Beth Anglin and this combination, since she was supposed to be the caller and this was supposed to be the incident number. The thing that I saw on the actual executions was that the lookup record failed with this combo. So immediately I deduced that this caller name must have been blank or something different than Beth Anglin because it didn't find a record. Record was not found. And how that showed up was down here. It said record not found in logs. So because I took the time to actually dump the log, it actually shows me the error that occurred inside of the flow designer itself.
Cool.
So I had a 1-2 combo there. Some combination here, which I suspected was the caller name, was missing. That's how I knew to go back and take a look at my incidents. And the one I wanted had it, but the one I copied did not. See?
Yeah.
And I just saw 70 and I grabbed it and that was a bad idea.
Um,
So here's the 70 I wanted, which is Beth's, and that one then is the one I plugged into here, and I left her name alone, and it found it. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the, let's get rid of this guy, and let's get rid of him, and do this. All right, so I went back and rewrote the action on incident to show you some of the things about the if-then structure. So this is rather interesting, and how it's rigged up is very curiously done. It's about the only way you can really do it in here, inside of Designer itself. Why I'm saying that is that what it really boils down to is this structure does not lend itself in the same manner as workflows does, where I can, take this and tie it back just by grabbing the plus and dragging it back to a previous step. It doesn't work that way. It actually cannot loop back on a previous step right now. There is no manner of doing that. So it's one of the downsides to this. But you do have looping constructs where you can build something similar to that into your code, and it does give you the capability, but there's nothing that's a go-to, if you will, not like there is in workflows where I just drag everything back up to the previous activity. So what about if structures? Well, they're a little odd too. Show you that you can you have a condition builder, so the no code stuff really comes into play here, and this is where pills again are extremely important to you, but it has some oddities to it, and I'll show you one of them here in a moment. And I would like to see this expanded in future releases, but right now you just kind of work with it. The other one is the rest of the structure. So there's, unlike in workflows, which gives you the if, and then you have the ability to add the different things you want. So you can do actually, I showed how to build a really massive if statement, doing if then, if then, if then, if then, and handling it in code. And that's one of my articles out there. This one's not so easy to work with. And yes, you can do the same thing, but it's all no code. So it actually gets kind of clunky. And I'll show you how that works here in a moment. The other one is you have the capability of ending inside of an if. You can do that inside workflows, but it's a little smoother looking than it is in here. And I'll show you what I'm talking about when we get to it. Finally, if you don't put an end inside, this really acts like a wrapper. So if I wrap these back up, this is actually an if else. And if I don't put anything as further actions, it falls through to line number 4 here. So bypass, if this is true, if number 2 is true, it executes 2.1 and then falls through to 4. So once you understand how the if then structure actually functions, it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's pretty obvious what it does. All right, so let's build this. I'm going to wipe these things out. I'm going to go after the user email address, whether it exists or doesn't. And I'm going to keep this logger here, which just says I made it to this spot. And I'm going to close him out. And right here in between these two, I'm going to create my if. So it's under flow logic here. Notice we have the ability to introduce subflows too. And then I've got my normal actions right here, but the flow logic is the one I'm after. This is where we do a for each, a do until, parallel, decision making, which is the replacement to if, to switch kind of, and then calling another workflow or calling a workflow, and then waiting for a certain amount of time. So this gives us quite a bit of flexibility. And notice the else if and else is missing here. So I'm going to pick an if. I'm going to call it test for email. And I'm going to see if the email is there or not. Here's where it gets kind of funny. All right, so I have a lookup on a user record that comes in. So this is step 2. So I back up to see what I've got available, step 1 or the trigger. Well, remember, this is a flow, not a subflow. So I've got the trigger information. So that's the incident record that's coming in. I'm going to use the user record, and they have a email. So right here, I'm going to drag the email over and drop it in here. Okay. Null is not null. You do not do this. You do not do this. Don't do this. And you don't do this. You do this. Is not or is blank. Leave the thing blank. That is the null. And it gets it right on everything that I've tested it against so far. So it's smart enough to know, hey, that could be a null, it could be a blank, you know. But there isn't any other indicator. You get these three, and that's it, or four. I'm sorry. You get these three only or four only things. But I would like to see all of the capabilities here. Contains, does not contain is just that's nice. That gives me the index of kind of stuff in code. But you know, is not null would be nice. Is null would be nice. Between, stuff like that. Some of the same stuff I have in list views be really useful. All right, so is not blank, is not null, done. So I'm going to look that up. I've got the test for it. I'm going to log it. I found one. So action, and you can actually thin things out here by typing in log, and it'll bring it up, and I can go after the log. So I'm going to log it as info. Found an email. And then I'll drag the email again over from the user record. And there you go. Nice no-code solution to this. Now, it gets real interesting here. I can let it fall through to the log after this, or I can end it here myself. Under flow logic, we actually have an additional thing called end. This acts just like as if it hit the end of the flow. So remember, this is under the, it's not where you think it is. I've in the past, I was looking around for this, trying to find it, and I thought it would be under the normal actions list. It's not, it's under flow logic side of things. But I want it to fall through. So now I want an else in here, right? Now you just tell it, and since it's in the straight line here, it didn't test correctly. Here I can capture it under flow logic. Now notice, isn't this interesting? You would think it would normally be there, right? Where is my else? It won't highlight. How crazy is that? That's because it's assuming it's right here. So I don't want that. I want it. Come on. No, I don't want to stage either. Stop. It's tricky here. Get rid of that. Come on. I want that. Nope. It's gonna fight me on it. Hold on a minute. Now I just did this about 10 seconds before I started up, just to make sure everything was functioning. So log, that's done. I'm not doing anything else. Yeah, so it's this right here is the next action. Add an action after 2. Nothing ever works. Flow logic, else is missing. Sigh. You know, things like this make you want to spit. All right. So yeah, it really works well. Let me get rid of this guy. He may be causing interference. No? Yeah, it might be. I'll hit save and see if it gets itself figured out. You don't have to have anything else here. It will just log it and fall through. Sure enough, it had to be saved. All right, I didn't run into that when I did it last time. So let's go put log in here. Thank you, whoever said that. So log log, and this should be an error, and unable And we'll go with incident number on this one. And then we'll log one more down here and wrap it up. There you go. So apparently you have to save to get the if, the else into there. That didn't happen last time I tried this, so odd. I tried the plus inside the if, that didn't work either. So there was something weird going on that didn't let me put the else in, and it needed to appear on this line. And you can, I don't think you can go back. Yeah, it gives you the else if now. All right, so something weird was going on there with the Flow Designer itself, and not sure exactly what, but you can do multiple else ifs in here. You can put a whole ton of them in, you know, tester email, else if something else, else if something else, you know, you can put as many as you want. All right, so save, activate. Now, the interesting part about this is since the inputs are the same, I can go back to our first script, fix script, and fire that off, and it'll work just fine. So what we're doing is we're testing for null email. I should say testing for empty email. Done. Save. Activate. Now, if I put an end right here, it would act just like if it went off and ended here, which means that the log wouldn't fire. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I am going to go ahead and run my fix script. And kick off. Now nothing changes on this. So it's still this guy, and it will print off the email if it finds it. And I do know this one has an email. We know 170 does not. Let's test 170 first. So instead of bombing, and I had it as a asynchronous, let's go see if it did it. Notice the name didn't fill in. I've had this happen before. This seems, oh, that's queued. Did it finish? It finished. I've had the name actually disappear on me and be gone. It's some flaw from Flow Designer itself. Notice the empty email was false. So it says it found one. No, it didn't. I'm sorry. I had it inverted. All right, so it didn't find one for 170, which is correct. We know that for a fact. And it printed wrapped up. So unable to find, printed wrapped up. All right, so now let's reverse it. And we know this is a 0. Run it again. Still queued. Still queued. There it goes. And that time it was true, and it logged in, it found Beth Anglin. So pretty cool stuff. Let's see, what else did I want to show you all today? I was going to get into script activities, scripted activity, but what I think I'll do is open it up for any additional questions here and wrap up at the top of the hour here. And then in our next session, I'll get into the custom script actions. And that's pretty wild stuff. I'm also going to open things up a little bit more by introducing the service catalog side of things, because we need that to really get wild.
Quick question. Did you mention that there was no known way of doing a go-to rollback type action in Flow Designer? And they're also asking, is this planned in the future of Flow Designer?
Not a go-to. Yeah, not a, don't know. We threw that out as a something bad that needed to be added, along with the workflow scratchpad side of things. we need to be able to loop back to a step inside of the Flow Designer flow, and we needed the workflow scratchpad. What we were told was, you're getting the workflow scratchpad, but we don't know yet about the go-to. So they are coming out either in the next release or the one after that. We're supposed to get something that's an analog to workflow scratchpad, but nothing yet on the go-to.
Yeah, I have no information on that.
Yeah. So as you can see, we'll get into the passing in and out of stuff here. I was hoping we get into the script actions this time around, but this is good stuff. We'll pick it up on the next session in a couple of weeks. And you're quite welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending. We've got, there's a lot more to show, and we're going to take a deep dive into the coding on the next round. I'm going to start out with the small stuff and work into some really cool things having to do with script includes.
Okay, and then we're going to be sharing a PDF version of these slides.
Yes.
Okay, great. Also, everyone, please make sure that you join us for the 28th, same time, same place. It has been posted and is no longer in draft mode on the community. Please share it in your social circles. We'd love to have everyone join to learn as much as they can from Mr. Stephen Bell of Accenture, and MVP of the community. And with that, have anything else to say, Stephen?
Nope, that's it. Thanks again for attending.
Thank you all. Have a great day.